Again, please pay attention. Please don't code along, or at least that's what I would prefer. Okay, so we have this guy, but the Angular is clearly not working because we're not seeing anything up here. So the next step is to make this Angular actually do something. It's loading the Angular just fine, but there isn't any data anywhere in here, so that's going to be our next step. So in order to get that data, we're going to need to create a product model. So everything that was in that data.js file, this thing over here. Hey, Isaac, if you're having problems, could you just wait for a bit? And then we'll get it together at the next break. I want to make sure that we're all together when we cover this stuff. Okay, so before, all of our data was inside this products data.json thing. This is where we're loading everything from. We're not going to do that anymore. Now it's going to be in the actual database. So if it's going to be in the database, I need a model. So I'm going to start. I'm going to create a new model file. Well, actually, I'll just do it in the order it says here. I'm going to create a migration first. Rails G migration, create products. It is hot as balls in here. Is that just me? Okay, I'm going to turn this thing on. Sorry.
She runs cold.
All right. Okay, cool. So I made this migration. So that's going to be in here. And now this is a place where I really should have just let you guys copy and paste this, but I didn't. So I'm going to type it out. T-string name, T-string image, URL, T decimal cost, T-string URL, T. Okay, cool. So now I need to make the model for that. So I made the migration. Now I'm making the model. Pop quiz. Is this going to be plural or singular?
Singular.
Yeah, nice. Class product active record base. And that's it. If I wanted to make a has many or whatever, I could do it in here. But this is just a one model app for right now, just to keep things simple. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to convert this file into a pure JSON file so that Ruby can parse it. Right now, this is JavaScript, and I want it to be JSON. So, hint, I only need to change 11 characters for this to be valid JSON all in a row. What do I need to change? Matt? Exactly, yep. So if I have all of this stuff and I paste it into JSON lint, which just tells you if your JSON is valid or not, it says, no, it is not. But if I just go in here and do exactly what Matt said and delete that, just the var data equals, and paste it in here, now it's good. So that was it. So now this is a valid JSON file, and now Rails is going to be able to read it. So I'm going to make Rails read it. We're going to use this for the seed file. So let's see. All right, I'm going to say data equals json.parse file.read db products data.json. So this is reading that file, and then it's parsing it as JSON, which just turns it into one big old array. Next up is I'm going to delete any products I have. And then finally, last step, I'm going to create all of my products from this data array. So if you pass an array into .create, then it creates one thing for each item in that array. So let's see if this works. That should be it. Migrate. So far so good. Right, db seed. Also so far so good. And then we'll fire this guy back up. All right, so that's all very well, but it didn't change this page at all. It's still not connected to the database yet. So that's where I'm going to need to head for this next step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this controller. And I mentioned before that you can make a controller action send out different things based on what the user wants. What I'm going to do here is if the user wants JSON, I'm going to send them JSON. If they don't, I'm going to, I mean like JSON, not like the Power Ranger. So if they want JSON, I'm going to send out JSON. If they don't, I'm going to send out HTML. Respond to do format, format.html, format.json, render JSON product.all. Okay, first I'm going to check that this works. All right, so if I go to /products, it's the exact same thing it was before. If I go to /products.json, I get this big JSON file. If I were to change this to, I don't know, fruit, veggie, then it would just print out the array fruit and veggie. So this takes pretty much anything, this rendered JSON, it takes anything and it spits it out as JSON. Just because this is format.json, I don't have to do JSON in here. I could do something like plain Robin is cool. There, and I'm not printing out JSON at all now. I can print out whatever I want here. But if you're doing something for JSON, then presumably you would print out JSON, which is why I'm doing render JSON product.all. So notice that I didn't do anything for this .html, and I didn't even put anything in here. Remember that implicit rendering thing. So because this doesn't have anything in it, when someone requests HTML, it's just going to do whatever the default action for this index route is. And that default action is to look for something called index.html.erb and show that. So that's what it does. So when I go to .json, it does this render JSON thing. When I go to not.json, just /products, it does whatever the default action is. All right, so if you guys did Rails G scaffold and everything, you probably saw this. And so here it is sort of explained. Any questions about this respond to thing? If you didn't do Rails G scaffold, you're a good person because it's cheap. Yeah, exactly. It's responding to just whatever is up here. If there's nothing up here, it considers that to be HTML. If there's .json, it considers it to be JSON. So it's responding to that.
So why have .json?
Great question. So it's because this guy, this inventory tracker, needs to get its data from somewhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to have it so that this page at /products actually loads /products.json, and it gets all of its data from there. So it's using the same route to really do two different things. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but we will. Other questions? Frisch?
Is this where you were talking about with the CSV file? How you load that? At the after class, but
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure you can do CSV in here, actually. Sorry, dude. No, that was more like in here. So instead of, like, this could be a CSV file if I wanted it to be, and then I could parse it like a CSV instead of parsing it as JSON.
you show me that later.
Sure. Max?
I'm curious as to if Angular in general conflicts with Rails in general in terms of like the actual files. In specific, I was thinking of like the app.js in Angular and how you make like a create function in that app.js, for example, versus like getting data from there versus like here. So like we're using our own data here, but then anyone else can add their own thing there. Is that like kind of what's going on?
That's true. We haven't quite gotten to that point yet. Could you ask me that again a little bit down the road when we get into ng resource and all that stuff? It's a really good question, though, so please remember it. Okay, cool. Any other questions about this part? All right, so now I'm going to make this actually work and actually load the data. That's going to be the next step. So to do that, I am going to start playing around in this products.js file. And so in here, first off, I need to load ng resource. So I'm going to inject that dependency. And then I'm going to include it in the inventory controller. So I think you've learned a different way of injecting dependencies where you would do something like this, probably, something like this. There are several different ways of doing it. I prefer doing it this other way. It's exactly the same, it just looks a little bit different. I only like it because I actually write out .inject, and so it sort of reminds me of what I'm doing. But, oops, that's inject. But it's still going to be an array with something inside it. So it does the exact same thing as what you saw the other day with the array up here. And then that gives me access to $resource in here. Okay, so now this vm.data equals data, that was from back in the old days when data was a global variable, when data was this guy. And it's not anymore. Now data is stuff from the database. So I need to get all of my data from the database. I'm going to say var product. I'm going to create a new resource, which I think you guys talked about yesterday and the day before, maybe. Okay, so first I'm going to put the URL at which I want to access all of this resources information. So that's going to be /products/id.json. So Angular automatically figures out, in the exact same way that Rails and Sinatra and everything else does, that this :id is like a variable, and it's going to put something in there. Angular automatically figures that out. I would say this is convention for like every backend framework you're going to see. Is like everyone uses this : whatever syntax. And I'm putting .json here because I want it to get the JSON version of everything. So there's that. Now I don't remember how else to set up a resource, so I'm just going to look at how I did it in here. I need to do this guy. And we'll talk about this when we get to updating things. Okay, so here we go, and now vm.data is actually going to, it was just data before, now it's going to be product.query. There we go. So now my data is product.query. This is a built-in Angular thing that's going to query my database and get back all of the different products. And let's see if it works. Forget anything? Nope. Moment of truth. Hey, there we go. Okay, so now it's getting all of these guys from the database. So there's that. Quick question. What happens if I click on these buttons over here, these little X's? What is it doing to the database? I see Kim shaking her head. Exactly. It's not doing anything. I haven't set up a destroy route for the database yet. So I haven't, in order to do that, I'm going to need to do something inside this products controller. Right now, all Rails can do is just show off the index of products. That's all it can do. There's nothing set up to let people destroy or update or create products. That's going to come down the road. Right now, all it's doing is just showing all of the products. I'm going to do the very last step here, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. The very last step is making the cost show up. So you'll notice that this column right here is noticeably blank. And that's because it's trying to do, I'm not actually going to do anything in this file, but it's trying to do .toFixed on here. And what it's getting from Rails is a string. And you can't do .toFixed on a string. It just returns nil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a callback function in here. So this is something that's going to run whenever it's done querying the database. So once it's gotten all the data back from the database, this function is going to run. So once I've got all the data back, I'm going to loop through each thing in the data. And I'm going to say product.cost equals parse float product.cost. So what this is doing is it's looping through each product, and it's taking that string that it got back from Rails, and it's forcing it to be a float. So without this, Rails, Angular doesn't really know what to do with strings. It knows that I'm trying to do something with them, but it's like, well, they're strings, they're not decimals, so I can't do anything. So this is going through each product that I got back from the database and turning it into a float. That's that. And I still have all of my like sweet little Angular features over here where I can like sort stuff and do all that jazz and like filter and everything that I could before. I can't do CUD yet. I can only do R, but we'll get to the rest of CRUD in the next step. All right, and stop. So, high-level questions about these steps so far. I always say high-level questions because if it's like, no, I got a syntax error, I'd rather address that individually. But like, just any questions about the mechanics of what we've seen so far. Winnie. Yeah, so what it gets back from the database, each product's cost is a string. And so it's not going to show up in here because I'm trying to do this like the toFixed thing. That's something that you can only do on numbers. And JavaScript's like, well, this is a string. I'm trying to put it to do decimal places, but it's a string, so I don't know how to do that. So I need to take all of those strings and tell JavaScript, hey, read this thing like it was a number. So that's what I'm doing here, and say, just change each product's cost to be a float. Other questions? Maureen?
For the update, there's this empty bracket. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, what does this thing do? I don't even remember. I think this is like, you could put like, oh, I think this is where you can like pass data to the API request or something. If you haven't used it yet, you're not going to need to. So yeah, I don't remember what it's there for, but it just sort of needs to be there in the same way that that needs to be there, even if there's nothing inside it. Good question. Yeah.
An empty array only needs to be there for actually creating a new module, right?
Yes.
Just
Yep, only if you're creating a new module. That's right. Good catch. Anything else? Okay, so I am going to, I'll give you guys, I'll put 20 minutes on the clock and you can take a break as you're doing it.